The poor person I supported for many years became the richest man in the world. But the first thing she did upon getting ashore was to eliminate me. It was all because I accidentally witnessed her intimacy with her childhood sweetheart. In the end, I was murdered by the two of them in my own home. When I opened my eyes again, I found myself back in high school. It was during the break between classes. Yi Kangsu came with her little childhood sweetheart to ask me for money. She slapped a piece of paper with the bank card number on the desk. Then she ordered me, "From now on, you will transfer 30,000 for living expenses to Shen Jingbing's account every month." Immediately, the people around us all gave me strange looks. They must have never seen such an arrogant poor student before, asking someone for money without even offering an explanation. I was so furious I almost laughed. Why should I? But she just turned around. With a look on her face as if saying, "You dared to question me?" she sneered. "What? It's just 30,000. Do you need a reason? 30,000 won't even buy me a handbag." Saying that, she lifted her chin. She began showing off the designer handbag in her hand to the crowd. But that was clearly a knockoff. It was something she bought online for 500, a fake. Yi Kangsu had been an arrogant female CEO in her past life for far too long. She had actually forgotten that, in reality, she was a poor student with pockets emptier than her face. Last life, I poured money and resources into her, turning her into the wealthiest woman in Asia. But she thought she was born to be a CEO. She had grown so used to ordering around her subordinates that when she saw me, she still spoke to me with that commanding tone. But without me. What was she? 30,000 for a handbag? Yi Kangsu, are you dreaming? Before I ever helped you, you couldn't even afford a 10-yuan lunchbox. I coldly sneered and crumpled the paper into a ball, then casually tossed it into the trash can before I spoke again. Why should I give him living expenses? I'm not his father. Yi Kangsu's face turned ashen. She was about to explode with rage, but was stopped by her little childhood sweetheart, Shen Jingbing. "Young Master Gu, 30,000 may mean nothing to you, but it's the entire living expenses for me and Zhao Xiao for a month. Your family is so wealthy. Helping us out should be the least you can do, don't you think? Is it really necessary to humiliate us like this?" After saying this, he turned to Yi Kangsu and said, "Even if we end up on the streets, I don't want you to lower your dignity to beg him for help. In my past life, Shen Jingbing had donated a kidney to her. She thought that was true love, and she viewed me as nothing more than a stumbling block in their relationship. But the truth was, I had paid a hefty price to buy that kidney. Shen Jingbing had raised the price at the last minute, hoping to make a quick profit off me, and that was how they got the chance to meet again. Yi Kangsu had illegally used company funds to buy him a villa, a luxury car, and even paid off his mother's enormous gambling debts, yet I let it slide. But now, in her rebirth, Yi Kangsu wanted to rekindle things with him, and I wouldn't stop her. But she actually wanted to keep using my money to repay Shen Jingbing's kidney-saving grace? Why should I? Does she think I'm a charity case? Do I look like a big, resentful fool? I was so furious I started laughing. I pulled out my phone, intending to notify the school to revoke the funding for Yi Kangsu. But to my surprise, she brought it up first. "Gu change. If you won't give him money, then I won't take your funding either." I was stunned. What kind of blackmailing tone was that? It was as if her accepting my funding was some kind of charity to me, and she expected me to be grateful. I must have been blind in my past life to have ever liked a woman like her. I pulled up the transaction records for the past 2 years, fighting back my disgust. Yi Kangsu, if you had any backbone, you would return the money I spent on you. I'll cut you a deal, a mere 80,000. 80,000? 10 years from now, I'll return you 8 million. Yi Kangsu sneered disdainfully, continuing to threaten me. But Gu Change, listen carefully. I'm giving you this one chance. If you miss it, you'll be begging me on your knees. I racked my brain trying to understand where her ridiculous confidence came from. Did she think that in 10 years, when she becomes Asia's richest woman, she could just snap her fingers and have my family go bankrupt? I almost died laughing. She actually thought she became rich by her own merit? Little did she know, it was all thanks to me that she was elevated. Give a dog the materials, technical support, and connections, and even a dog can become the richest in the world. She didn't even appreciate it. And now she was delusional enough to think I'd be like those sycophants, chasing after her, trying to please her. Looking at her face, I couldn't help but, in 10 years, she see a look on my face she won't forget. I rolled my eyes dramatically. I had someone freeze her funding card. Then I wrote out a promissory note for 80,000. Yi Kang-soo, in a fit of anger, slammed her handprint on it. She glared at me with venom in her eyes and spat out the next words. Don't regret this when it's all over. Regret? I regretted raising such a vicious valve in my past life. But what I feared more was her coming back to bother me after she changes her mind. After school, I called my driver to pick me up. I had just opened the car door when someone suddenly shoved me from behind with force. I bit back my anger and steadied myself. It was Yi Kang-soo. She was hastily shoving Shen Jingbing into the car. Then she climbed in herself. When she slammed the door shut, she didn't forget to give me an order. Zifei's mother was beaten into the hospital by creditors. The situation is bad. You should take a taxi home. She then turned to my driver and barked, "Drive to the hospital." The driver looked at her like she was insane. Without saying a word, he pulled out his phone to call the police. Yi Kang-soo, furious, kicked the back of the passenger seat. Drive! If you delay and Song's condition, the consequences are on you. The driver calmly snapped a photo of her criminal evidence, turned off the engine and got out of the car. He locked the two of them inside. Suddenly, two madmen burst into the car. They ruined the genuine leather seats and frightened my young master. I've got them under control now. Please send the police immediately. I couldn't help but laugh out loud. I crossed my arms and watched Yi Kang-soo acting all high and mighty in the car. As expected, without me, she was nothing. At that moment, Yi Kang-soo took a deep breath, turned her head to look at me, wearing a look as if she were sacrificing her dignity for love. Goo change. I can accept your funding, but don't imagine that I will like you. I stared at her with a face full of question marks. Does anyone care about my life or death? I was simply funding a poor student as a way to give back to society. What wrong have I done? At that moment, the police arrived. They immediately escorted the two of them out of the car. Yi Kang-soo, with a dark expression, glared at me and asked, Goo change, what do you mean by this? Is this your way of getting my attention? It's so childish. I signaled to the officer, tapping my head. I quietly whispered, they both have mental issues. I suggest sending them straight to the hospital. Then I smiled and told Yi Kang-soo, it doesn't mean anything. I just asked the police to take you both to the hospital. The officer looked at them with suspicion. They were dressed poorly but acted as if they were royalty, looking down on everyone else. It really didn't seem normal. You two need to go to the hospital? Yes. The officer seemed to realize something. Alright, get in the car. I'll take you there. As for which hospital they were being sent to, I had no idea. But when I woke up in the middle of the night and saw the 56 missed calls from Yi Kang-soo and the hundreds of WeChat messages from her, I knew they didn't end up in any proper hospital. Half an hour ago, the last text message Yi Kang-soo sent me was, you have 3 minutes to answer my call, or else the consequences will be yours to bear. I yawned, turned off my phone, and went back to sleep. The next day, during the school sports meet while I was in the cafeteria getting water, I saw Yi Kang-soo and Shen Jingbing eating together. I heard they had been locked up in the psychiatric ward overnight. In the end, the school had to step in to bail them out. The class monitor quietly leaned in and whispered to me, "I thought they both seemed mentally fine before. How did they suddenly snap?" Last night, Yi Kyangsu called every single classmate. She said she was going to be the future richest person in the world, and that if we gave her $500 to redeem her, she'd pay us back 100 times in 10 years. This was crazier than when Qinshai Huang called and asked for tribute. Her scam was even more absurd than the great generals. I spat my water out in laughter. It turned out the victims were even more than I expected. Last night, my dad and all the top managers at the company got calls from Yi Kyangsu. She told them she had a business project that was sure to make a fortune, as long as they got her out of the psychiatric ward. My dad was so scared that he held an emergency meeting this morning with dark circles under his eyes. Could it be a hacker leaked our company's secrets? Otherwise, how could a crazy person have access to our internal phone numbers? This really can't be blamed on Yi Kyangsu. She's been an orphan since childhood, without any relatives to rely on. She finally had a little childhood friend, but his mother was a gambler. They didn't have a single penny to spare. Of course, they would cling to the people around me and drain them. I don't want to have anything to do with them in this life. I tried to leave, but the class monitor excitedly grabbed my arm. He signaled for me to keep watching. Yi Kyangsu had another episode. She held an orange juice in her hand, shaking it around like she was swirling wine. She looked at the $15 steak in front of her, a mocking smile curling on her lips. Such garbage doesn't deserve to be called food. Throw it on the ground, and even a dog wouldn't eat it. Zhao Xiao, I know you wouldn't even look at this cheap stuff, but you've been hungry all day. Why not eat a little? Yi Kyangsu snorted coldly. Even if I starve to death, this garbage doesn't deserve to enter my stomach. The cafeteria owner grilling the steaks had a fiery temper. He slammed his knife down on the cutting board. You two used a coupon to order the cheapest steak here, and now you want to complain? I'll let you have one extra serving of pasta, fine. But now you're picky? Eat it if you can, otherwise get lost. Who do you think you are? How dare you speak to me like that? Do you believe I can make a call and have your family's restaurant go bankrupt? Shen Jingbing anxiously tried to stop her. Zhao Xiao, stop it. They're just a small business. It's not easy for them either. The class monitor, who had been watching the drama the whole time, pinched his thigh hard. But in the end, he couldn't help but laugh. And that laugh was the final straw. It successfully caught Yi Kyangsu's attention. The moment she looked at me, the hairs on my arm stood on end. I didn't even have time to grab my bottle of water before I turned and ran. But unfortunately, I didn't escape. I was cornered by Yi Kyangsu at the end of the corridor, her eyes red and hands on her hips. Goo change! You can't afford the price of angering me. I looked up at the sky in silence. What kind of fate did I create for myself? To be subjected to such inhuman torment? Well, seeing me with Shen Jingbing, are you jealous? Did you think of this way to get back at me? Goo change, this is all you can do. But I advise you to save your breath. Stop with those little tricks to try to seduce me. I've already made a lifelong commitment to Shen Jingbing. I'll never be with you. Stay away from us. If I find out you have any ulterior motives, I won't let you off the hook. I desperately tried to recall how in my previous life, I ended up liking Yi Kyangsu. Back then, I thought Yi Kyangsu had some degree of beauty. But now, I realize she's definitely not a normal woman. The school sports meet was undoubtedly the best opportunity for Yi Kyangsu to make her comeback. The school would invite business tycoons to visit on this day. Every impoverished student would actively participate. If they performed well, they would be selected and get the chance to be funded. Yi Kyangsu had been the aerobics champion every year, and her academic performance had always been in the top 3 of the school. It didn't take long for a real estate tycoon to take notice of her. The homeroom teacher immediately pulled Yi Kangsu over and started praising her to the sky. Mr. Lee, this student is a great candidate for Tsinghua University. Supporting her is a sure thing. In my previous life, Yi Kangsu did indeed get into Tsinghua, but she wasn't a promising candidate. She was a disaster, the kind of person who brought misfortune to anyone who got close to her. Mr. Lee nodded with satisfaction. Good. From now on, our company will sponsor you 5,000 yuan a month until you graduate from university. 5,000. Yi Kangshu's face instantly darkened. 5,000 yuan? Are you insulting me? This student, 5,000 yuan is not a small amount. It should be enough for your regular school expenses. She sneered arrogantly and mocked. The real estate industry is in decline. It doesn't have much potential for development in the future. I'll reluctantly accept your sponsorship. Fine. But you're only offering me 5,000? How am I supposed to recruit a team in the future? I'm not like those lazy, hand-out poor students. I'm a woman who will lead a team. I'll take them to the international stage. If you can't afford to sponsor me, then clear the position and let someone else take it. After saying that, she turned away without caring about Mr. Lee's face, which had turned an ugly shade of purple. She walked off. The homeroom teacher was furious and called after her. Yi Kangsu. She turned around, her eyes filled with contempt. From now on, don't push any Sunset Industry companies on me. The person who sponsors me must at least have a net worth higher than Gu Chang's parents. I will thoroughly review their qualifications. Anyone who doesn't meet the standard is not qualified to sponsor me. Her words infuriated Mr. Lee. No matter how much the principal and homeroom teacher apologized, he refused to sponsor our school's poor students any further. And he directly implicated to other innocent students. The pair of twins, who had been raised by their grandparents since childhood, heard that there was a company willing to sponsor them to go to university. They were so moved that tears streamed down their faces. But because of Yi Qiangshu's disruption, the opportunity was gone. The two sisters crouched down on the ground, crying uncontrollably. I couldn't stand it anymore and walked up to comfort them. It's okay. Gu Group is willing to sponsor you. Really? How about I give you 1,000 a month each? No, that's too much. 2,000 a month for both of us is enough. The two sisters knelt on the ground and kowtowed to me. Thank you. After my sister and I graduate from college, we will definitely repay your kindness. See, there are still people in this world who are grateful. After the school sports meeting ended, the class held a dinner event. As to penniless freeloaders, it was no surprise that they came to mooch food. Yi Kangsu didn't pay a single cent. She sat in the main seat, acting high and mighty, constantly criticizing. The decoration is bad, the service is bad, the food is bad. She almost had disgust written all over her face. The homeroom teacher and the other students were getting fed up with them. Since that day, Yi Kangsu not only drove away an investor, but also caused our class to lose to medals we should have won. The reason was that Song Xiaoru fell during the long jump and scraped her knee. Yi Kangsu, who was still participating in the competition, suddenly withdrew halfway and went to the infirmary with Shen Jingbing. She even threatened the school nurse, saying, "If you can't treat him, I'll make you pay." Seeing that none of us paid attention to her, Yi Kangsu, who had always been the center of attention, couldn't stand it. She poured the soda she had just drunk straight into the grilled fish plate in front of her. Then she started tapping her fingers on the table, coldly questioning, "Who chose this place? How can the taste be so bad?" Yi Kangsu knew very well that this restaurant was run by my family. She was just deliberately trying to make things difficult for me. The class monitor couldn't stand it anymore and spoke up. "Yi, we all think this place is fine. Is there something wrong with it?" "Fine," Yi Kangsu sneered. "Have you ever seen a truly good restaurant? What a pity. You'll never experience it in your life." Shen Jingbing also echoed. Some people are just born with a poor, miserable fate. Jiao Xiao, don't argue with them. They'll never catch up to you in this lifetime. One is desperately hyping things up, while the other is desperately flattering. They really are a perfect match. I held down the class monitor's trembling hand and smiled. Future female tycoons probably won't need people like us poor folks to pay for their meals, right? Today's class dinner bill, I'll leave it to the future tycoon to pay. I placed the bill in front of her. Yi Qiangsu glanced at it, but didn't say anything. I immediately exclaimed, 3,000 yuan must be nothing to you, Yi. Not to mention 3,000. Yi Qiangsu probably couldn't even scrape together 10 bucks. She knew I was deliberately mocking her. But for the sake of her female tycoon image, she still took the bill and left. As she left, she pulled Shen Jingbing along with her. When they came back, Shen Jingbing's family heirloom jade pendant was gone. He glared at me with murderous intent, as if I were the one who sold his heirloom to show off. Just then, a group of uninvited guests stormed into the gathering. Without saying a word, they grabbed Shen Jingbing and started dragging him out. From their attire, they looked like local thugs. They were also cursing loudly. Your mom owes us payday loans. If you don't pay up today, don't blame us for not being polite. It's my mom who owes you. Go look for her. I'm just a student. I don't have any money. Shen Jingbing's face turned pale with fear, his grip tightening on the edge of the table. After all, we were classmates. A few of the men in our class wanted to help him, but they were all pushed back by the thugs, who were holding knives. The leading thug waved Shen Jingbing's student ID in front of him. He said that his mother had escaped from the hospital this morning. Before running away, she left a letter saying the son must repay the debt. They said they would take Shen Jingbing's hand. I suddenly remembered from my previous life. Shen Jingbing had even sold his kidney and engaged in blackmail. I guessed he was forced by his mother into doing it. But a pitiable person must also have their flaws. Just as Shen Jingbing was being dragged away, he suddenly shouted, I have money. My girlfriend is going to be the future tycoon. She promised me she would help me pay off the debt. Future ... tycoon? Seeing that the thugs didn't believe him, he quickly reassured them. Really? My girlfriend will be very rich in the future. This little bit of gambling debt won't be a problem for her at all. Look, she's here. Everyone followed Shen Jingbing's gaze. Yi Qiangsu came out of the restroom. She was just a poor, shabby student. She boldly said, didn't his mom just owe you over $1 million? I'll pay it for him. Then she turned and borrowed paper and a pen from a waiter. Like in my previous life, she skillfully wrote her name. 10 years from now, I'll repay you 10 times the principal and interest. The thug burst into laughter. He immediately tore the debt note to pieces and threw it in Yi Qiangshu's face. Hey, spray. I felt embarrassed just watching the scene. Seeing the thug ignore her, Yi Qiangsu pulled me out from the crowd. Goo change. Help him pay off the debt. I'll consider being your girlfriend. I can let you have me. But this heart will always belong to Shen Jingbing. Yi Qiangsu closed her eyes in despair. Like someone willing to sacrifice themselves, she grabbed my shoulder. She was about to kiss me forcefully. I instinctively dodged. Suppressing my disgust, I angrily scolded her. Are you out of your mind? When have I ever said I liked you? Yi Qiangsu tilted her head. She pushed her swollen left cheek with her tongue and coldly sneered. Stop pretending. In the last life, you loved me to death. Could you at least bring some brains with you in this life? Yes, in my past life I liked you. But that was 3 years later. Right now, I'm not familiar with you. Stop trying to provoke me. As expected, you remember your past life. Yi Qiangsu didn't seem surprised at all. After all, the 3 of us had died together in our last life. She and Shen Jingbing were reborn. There was no reason for me to be an exception. Well, that's great. I don't have to prove anything anymore. If you obediently bring the money out, I'll guarantee the safety of your family 10 years from now. Otherwise, you know what happens if you anger me. Yi Kangsu was always vengeful. The first thing she would do after gaining wealth was eliminate anyone who had bullied her. But don't forget, without me, you can never be the future tycoon. Oh, really? I helplessly rolled my eyes. Fearing I'd get caught up in trouble, I quickly turned and fled the scene. Yi Kangsu chased me, still threatening. Goo change. I guarantee you'll pay a painful price for the wrong decision you made today. Later, I heard from the class monitor about what happened after I left that day. Yi Kangsu, in an attempt to get away, told the debt collectors that she had connections with their boss. In the previous life, their boss, eager to make money, had rushed to please her. But unfortunately, he wasn't her type. In this life, she hoped they would do her a favor and clear her debts, promising that in 10 years, she would bring them along to make big money. However, they thought she was insane and immediately resorted to violence. If it weren't for the class monitor secretly calling the police, the two of them would have been thrown into the Huangpu River to feed the fish by now. The class monitor ordered the classmates to move Yi Kangsu and Shen Jingbing's table out. He said they had dropped out of school. They claimed they were going to start a business and make a fortune. I knew about this. A couple of days ago, Yi Kangsu even sent me a message, gloating. She said she would soon ruin my reputation. She asked me if I regretted it in my past life, if you hadn't brought people to catch me cheating, if you had turned a blind eye to Shen Jingbing's existence. Maybe I could have been with you. Unfortunately, you couldn't stand him. I replied to her, who do you think you are, trying to compete with a real man? You're not even worthy. Hey, now it seems Shen Jingbing is indeed a better match to be my husband. Get lost. In my previous life, Yi Kangsu secretly embezzled public funds to buy Shen Jingbing a luxury mansion and car. I also knew about their plot to kill me. I endured it all to find the evidence to expose her and have her leave with nothing. Once I had power in my hands, I would confront them and reveal their true nature. By then, Yi Kangsu was already 6 months pregnant, and she was desperately trying to figure out how to make me her backup. When she saw me come to catch them in the act, she panicked. When the lawyer announced that Yi Kangsu wouldn't receive a penny, she lost it completely. She secretly went to the kitchen and turned on the gas. Then, when I wasn't paying attention, she pushed me inside to kill me and silence me. Just before the gas exploded, I grabbed both of them and dragged them in with me. Their lives would be the price for my survival. In the end, I wasn't the one losing. In this life, I didn't want anything to do with them anymore. But since Yi Kangsu insisted on tearing things apart with me, I had no choice. 3 days later, I went with my dad to the startup incubation center, and there I saw Yi Kangsu again. She had dropped out of school and settled there, trying to replicate the success she had in the past life. But it wasn't that easy. Which company would trust a dropout high school student? In her past life, she had a Tsinghua University degree, and with my recommendation, she could easily stand on stage, speaking her mind to busy CEOs and executives. But this time, she didn't even have the right to enter the door. She had to bribe the security guard to sneak in. Yi Kangsu looked at me with a smug expression. She dramatically hid her business plan behind her back. She was convinced that I would never cooperate with her. Goo Group, never, she said, looking at me as if I were nothing. Goo change, just give up already. I nodded unfazed. Is it possible I'm here to invest in someone else? I wasn't remotely interested in her. In fact, in my previous life, my father valued my senior, Suan, the most. She was a top graduate from Tsinghua, a low-key person, reliable in everything she did, and much more mature in her thinking than Yi Kangsu. My father wanted me to partner with her. He saw her as a potential future daughter-in-law. But in the previous life, the one I liked wasn't her. So Suwan ended up as the vice president of the group, feeling a bit forced into it. Because of me, she had to endure a lot of things. This time, I wanted to make it right and give her the place she deserved. In just half an hour of her presentation, my father decided to invest in her. After the event ended, Suwen intentionally approached me to thank me. I heard it was your strong recommendation that convinced Chairman Su to come listen to my speech. Thank you so much. I felt a little guilty, scratching my head. If it wasn't for you, I wouldn't have had this great opportunity. I waved my hand dismissively. Actually, I didn't do anything. You're just that excellent. In my previous life, I had taken away the opportunity Su-Wen deserved to shine, all because I wanted to help Yi Qiangsu. I had caused her to waste a few years in a mediocre position. Fortunately, Su-Wen was diligent and grasped another opportunity to prove herself. Otherwise, my guilt would be immense. This time, I made sure to give Su-Wen the opportunity she deserved. Su-Wen quickly began to excel in her career, becoming the perfect daughter-in-law my father couldn't stop praising. I also managed to get into Tsinghua University and joined Su-Wen's research team. A few days later, Yi Qiangsu came to find me at school. She was clearly showing off in front of me. I've already secured investment, she said, although 5 million is a bit small. But it's just the first step toward becoming the richest person. I believe that within 10 years, I'll return to my original position. She looked at me with disdain. Then, with a smug smile, she added, just wait and see, you'll regret it and you'll be on your knees in front of me. I chuckled coldly, refusing to acknowledge her. Just 2 days later, news reached my ears that Yi Qiangsu had been scammed. It turned out that the investors had given her some false promises, and in return, they'd cleaned her out. Her patent was bought for a mere 1 yuan. Her core business idea was copied. Even the original website she had so painstakingly built was attacked and shut down. After a series of entrepreneurial failures, Yi Qiangsu couldn't sit still any longer. She came to the school to confront me. Gu Change, is this your doing? Are you afraid I'll succeed and get revenge on you? I raised my hands innocently, signaling my lack of involvement. Su-Wen stepped in front of me, her tone calm but firm as she spoke. Yi Qiangsu, is it? I've heard of your situation. Your entrepreneurial ideas and direction were right. But the world is full of treacherous people. You really should be more careful from now on, Su-Wen warned. Do you really think you have a say in this? Su-Wen, last time you were just my dog, doing my bidding. Stop pretending. Get lost. Yi Qiangsu had always thought that becoming the richest person was her sole achievement, and that neither I nor Su-Wen had any part in it. But she was wrong. Without the two of us, she would never have reached the top position. Su-Wen firmly grabbed Yi Qiangsu's hand, not allowing her to get any closer to me. With a cold voice, Su-Wen threatened, if you ever come back to cause trouble for Gushao again, don't blame me for not being polite. Then she personally escorted Yi Qiangsu out of the school. In my previous life, because of my protection, Yi Qiangsu's entrepreneurial path was too smooth. It made her forget how cruel and dark the world could be. Even with her memories from the past life and her foresight into future industries, starting a business was still not an easy task. And so she was scammed again. In her desperation to succeed, driven by greed, Yi Qiangsu found herself tricked by a fraudulent group. The class monitor noticed something was wrong, and out of kindness, he called the police for her. 3 months later, Yi Qiangsu was rescued. That day, the police contacted me and asked if I could cooperate with their investigation. The officer asked me, has Yi Qiangsu contacted you over the past few months? I honestly opened the chat history and showed them, for the sake of the feelings we once shared. As long as you transfer 500,000 to me, I will forgive you and forget the past. Gu Change. I'm just 30,000 short of my goal to succeed in starting my business. I promise that once I become the richest person, I won't take revenge on you. Gu Change. Transfer 100,000 to me. I'll immediately make you the vice president. Gu Change. Transfer 50,000 to me. I looked at the record, speechless for a moment. The police officer was desperately holding back a laugh. I also felt quite speechless. just as I was about to leave. The police told me that Yi Qiangsu had been involved in fraud. She might end up in prison. She also wanted to see me. I didn't want to go. The police officer urged me, saying Yi Qiangsu was very stubborn. Only if I went would she reveal the truth about everything, to save more people from falling victim to telecom fraud. I went. Yi Qiangsu no longer had the arrogance and grandeur she once held. She just sat there quietly on the chair, her hands handcuffed. When she saw me, it took a long time for her emotions to settle before she finally spoke. "Gu change. I'm sorry." Following the police's instructions, I asked her, "When you first joined the fraud group, didn't you notice anything unusual?" She gave a bitter smile. "From the first day I walked in, I knew this place wasn't right, but I didn't want to admit it." The former richest person had actually fallen to this point. Gu change. Now I realize what kind of useless person I really am. Without you, I am nothing. But I also have my pride. I didn't want to admit it, and I was even more afraid that once I admitted it, I wouldn't be able to stand up again. I tried desperately to prove myself. I wanted to achieve something, to show you what I was capable of. But sadly, all I proved was that I was indeed a useless person. Gu change. Actually, I've known for a long time that the one I loved was you. It's just that, in the past life, no matter how high I climbed, you never looked up to me. It seemed like all of this was part of your plan. That day, when you barged into my house with Shen Jingbing, my first instinct was to try to win you back. As long as you forgave me, it would be like nothing ever happened. We could go back to living our happy life. But you only wanted a divorce, wanting me to leave with nothing. When I realized I had been reborn, I didn't intentionally get close to Shen Jingbing. I was just angry with you. After all, if you really loved me, you wouldn't have tried to drag me to death at that final moment. I cupped my hands to my ears. I asked her, "Are you finished? If you are, I'm leaving." Su Wangson started a new project and needs people. I can't stay out here too long. Especially not wasting time listening to other people talk nonsense. Just then, Shen Jingbing appeared out of nowhere. He shoved me aside and snarled at Yi Qiangsu. "You actually lied to me? I was your savior in the past life. If it weren't for my kidney, you'd be dead by now. You promised you'd be with me for life. I need to make a lot of money to help pay off my mom's gambling debts. But then you took the property deed my dad left for me and disappeared. Where's the money? Give me back my money, you liar." "Savior, that kidney was something I paid for. You can sell yourself to anyone. You just happened to sell to me. In the past life, I bought you mansions, luxury cars, and took you on trips. Yet you were still unsatisfied? This life, you got me to drop out of school early. If it weren't for you pulling me into this mess, I would have never joined this fraudulent company. Now look at me, I'm in jail. And you can forget about getting off easy. Police, I want to report something. Shen Jingbing is part of the fraud ring. He's the one who got me involved." "Shut up, you filthy woman. I flatter you a little, and you actually think you're the richest person in the world? Looking at you, pretending to be rich while you're broke, I'm disgusted. It makes me want to vomit. I warn you, if you don't return the property deed and the family heirloom jade pendant to me, I'll make sure you rot in prison. Police, I want to report something." Yi Qiangshu's crimes go beyond just those. The drama of dogs now, this is getting good. Shen Jingbing rushed out to report to the police, afraid that if he waited another second, Yi Qiangsu would spend her whole life in prison. Yi Qiangsu looked at me anxiously. "Gu change. For the sake of us being married in this lifetime, could you please help me? I know that if you step in, I can spend a few less years in prison. Do you know how many families have been torn apart by telecom fraud? Yi Qiangsu, this is all your own doing. You should accept your punishment and be reformed in there." Yi Qiangshu's verdict was handed down. She was sentenced to 3 years in prison. Since that day, Shen Jingbing disappeared. I heard that one day, covered in wounds, He found the police to report a case. He claimed that his gambling-addicted mother sold him to a wealthy old woman with peculiar preferences to be her pet. He couldn't take it anymore and begged the police to save him. At first, the police responded and went to investigate. But the old woman produced their marriage certificate, along with a statement from Shen Jingbing's mother. In the end, it was classified as a domestic dispute, and the case was closed. After that, there was no more news of Shen Jingbing. The day Yi Qiangsu was released from prison happened to be the day of our class reunion. She came. Standing at a distance, she stubbornly stared at me. 3 years in prison had stripped her of her youthful beauty. She had become emaciated. Her eyes hollow. She wore a sweatshirt that had been washed until it was faded. When she saw me, she became very emotional. Goo change. I was wrong. Please give me another chance, will you? I know you still have feelings for me. You can't forget about me. After all, I was your first love. From now on, I promise to live a good life with you. I'll even give you children to inherit the family fortune if you want. In the past life, Yi Qiangsu was too career-driven. She insisted on being an independent, powerful woman. She wouldn't let me have children. She even demanded that I invest all the family's resources in her. Because I loved her so much, I didn't care about anything. As long as she was happy, I'd even give up the position of the richest person for her. I had to handle my family's pressure to have children alone. But she secretly cheated on me behind my back and tried to have her illegitimate child inherit my family's billions. I was a fool in my past life. In the end, I didn't even leave behind a proper family record. I angrily shook her hand off. 900 million women in the country are lining up to have my child. No matter how many rounds there are, it won't ever be you, a criminal, who gives birth to the heir of the Gu family. Gu change. At that moment, Su Wen came out of the restroom. When she saw Yi Qiangsu, Su proudly leaned her head into my chest and coquettishly called out, "Honey!" By then, Su Wen had already married me. Having learned from my past life's experience, this time I took the position of the richest person for myself. Su Wen willingly took a step back and became a stay-at-home wife. We were very affectionate, but Yi Qiangsu still wouldn't give up. She stared at Su Wen in my arms, her eyes full of envy, jealousy, and unwillingness. She screamed out in desperation, "I don't believe it. Gu change, you're definitely lying to me, right? How can you marry her? I'm your wife. I don't have a fetish for wearing a green hat, carrying another man's child, and expecting me to be the one to clean up your mess as your wife." I couldn't be bothered to argue with this crazy woman. I held Su Wan's hand and turned to leave. Yi Qiangsu stubbornly chased after me, apologizing. When she saw I was ignoring her, she shamelessly squatted outside my company building every day, using the lowest, most vulgar methods to harass me incessantly. She even fabricated lies in front of reporters, claiming Su Wen was the mistress who climbed to the top, and that she was the true wife of the richest man. She cried on camera, her face full of tears, begging me for another chance. This time, she promised to treat me right. I feared the gossip and rumors would hurt Su Wen. She was pregnant now, with triplets. I didn't expect her to trust me so much. She stepped forward and clarified the rumors herself, even laughing and mocking Yi Qiangsu. My husband is the richest man. Even if he were to find a mistress, he wouldn't pick someone as ugly as her. I immediately had someone blacklist Yi Qiangsu. Later, I heard that she had no job, no family, and couldn't survive anymore. She ended up with a department manager in his 60s. Before long, she was sick all over and tragically died on the street. Su Wen, soft-hearted, paid for her funeral. Su Wen gave me 3 smart and clever sons. She also decided to return to work and help me run the company. The twin sisters I had sponsored back then became my most valuable assistants. Though they graduated from a regular second-tier university, they were diligent and eager to learn. grateful and loyal. They not only brought their grandparents, who raised them to live in the city, but also rejected offers from major companies for me. I believe that one day, with their help, we will build our own business empire, step by step.